know, you can hear me, you can see me. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Gavin Leach. I'm actually a pitch coach for STC and the Rainforest Consortium, if you will, Innovation Academy. A little bit about me so you understand kind of the context, the framework that I work within. So I have my bachelor's degree in marketing, a master's degree in organizational communication, and I'm in progress on working on my dissertation for my PhD in instructional design. I tell you all these things so you understand that I have a pretty good idea of how to, well, not only the business aspects of your business, but also how to communicate or articulate that in a communication environment, or how to, make it persuasive and things like that. So today, this presentation is about pitching your idea. So we're going to take this business idea, and I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how you articulate it to the business community, so that it's persuasive, it's compelling, and insightful, and also too, it's condensed, right? Think of the elevator speech that you have as far as networking yourself. So it's similar along those same lines. All right, so I've been a public speaking teacher now for quite a few years in the comm department, and I came up with this silly little acronym as it relates to public speaking and idea generation. So taking this idea, this technical idea, and thinking about how to strategize a communication plan to articulate that to the general public. So this is what I came up with. So it's called the about process. So a big part of this presentation is going to go through each one of these in detail, so you have an idea of how to articulate your business idea. Now, this is the things that you're going to think about before you actually pitch the idea. The second half of this presentation will be about how you actually pitch, okay? So the first one is audience analysis. So the first step in this process of thinking about your business idea and how you communicate that to the general public is you think about the audience, okay? There are two factors associated with audience analysis. The first one is demographics, right? So you can see here on this graphic, some of the things that are a part of demographics is their occupation. Yeah.
I can't see the screen. I guess we didn't share it. Sorry.
Okay. It's okay. Right. So we're going to share the screen here in a second.
Bad.
You're definitely sharing now.
There we go. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Now we're good?
There we go.
All right. Great. All right. Okay. So first is audience analysis. So there are two parts to audience analysis. The first part is demographics. And I think you've heard this term, right? And these are the things that are a part of that. So gender, location, income, values, things like that. So one of the most important steps in this whole process in terms of how to articulate your idea is to know who you're articulating it to, how you're communicating it, okay? So doing a little research, doing your homework, and finding out a little bit about their demographical information is important, all right? The other aspect of this audience analysis is what you see here, which is called psychographics. And these are things like opinions, attitudes, values, beliefs, and so forth, okay? This is also a big part of the way in which you communicate your business idea. Now, an easier way to remember this is the demographics, more or less, are things that you can see. You can see someone's height and weight and age and gender and things like that, generally speaking. The things that you can't see would be the psychographics, opinions, values, behaviors, and so forth. However, you can actually see some of these things when you interact with someone. Can you tell me how you might be able to decipher some of these things that you can't see?
What people wear.
Very good, right? With the way they wear, what they wear, how they talk, some of the things that they say, and so forth. So if you know in advance that I'm going to be talking to this person, it would be a good idea for you to try to find out as much information about that person as possible, because you want to relate them. You want to relate to them. You want to take your business idea and modify it, edit it to where it resonates with that particular audience. Now, in this particular instance, how would you find out this information? Some of it we talked about in terms of what you can see, but how else would you find out this information?
You could ask them.
You could ask in advance. Yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself. Yeah.
Or identify where, I don't know.
No, keep going, keep going.
So something that I've done is like try to align myself with like what they've done or network within their group. Try and plug it in that way and then
Very
figure
good.
out how or where they're engaging.
Yeah, using your network to find all this information. How about LinkedIn? Yeah, LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn. So this is the professional outlet for social media, right? And so I think it would be a good idea, again, this is if you know in advance who's going to be there. But this could be to any sort of presentation environment that you're at, is that it's an important step in this process to figure out who it is that you're going to be presenting to, who you're going to be teaching, those types of things. So LinkedIn is a great resource for this. All right, the second part of this, so once you understand the audience, then you brainstorm. Okay, so this is a picture of a concept map about health. Are you familiar with the term concept mapping? Yeah, okay. So the idea behind this is in the middle here, you have some sort of topic, okay, and then you branch out from there, right? And this is just to spark the creative juices, right? Now this can be done in a business context as well too. So those of you who have a piece of paper, I'd like for you to actually do one with me. So go ahead and take out a sheet of paper, and I want you to think of either a business idea that you're currently working on, right? Or some aspect of your life, whether it's professional, academic, or whatever, okay? And I want you to brainstorm on how you would solve that problem or how you would enhance your experience in that environment or whatever. So I think some of you probably have a business idea now currently, is that correct? Okay, great. All right, so so that's this is in the middle here is your business idea. So think of 3 or 4 aspects of your business that you think make it special. So 3 or 4 things within that business idea that make it special, make it unique, marketable, those types of things. Right? This is a great activity to do not only just in the business world, but you can do it personally, as you can see here, health, a goal that you want to achieve, things of that nature. And you can go as in depth as you want to go with this. It's a free-flowing, constructive, creative process that shouldn't be limiting. You should write down whatever comes to your mind.
Yeah, this is Susan.
Hello, Susan.
Hey, can you repeat the questions by the students so that we can hear them?
Oh, sure. Okay. Moving forward, I guess that's what we'll do.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Sounds like a higher power talking to us.
Well, Susan is,
Yes. So you can go, I mean, gosh, you can spend a lot of time on this particular activity, and I think it's a worthwhile activity. But once you have the 3 or 4 main things about your business or whatever goal you want to achieve, then you branch off from there. Similar to what you see here in this health exercise, or this health concept map. This person here wrote down that there are 5 main aspects of health: exercise, stress, sleep, diet, and health. And then you can see from here, there's additional branches from there, all right? So again, you can just free flow on this and get an idea of what your business looks like on paper, but this is how it fits in with the audience analysis. Once you have a pretty in-depth concept map, then what you do is you consider the audience and say to yourself, okay, based on this context, this audience, diet would be the most important, or it could be exercise. Now, generally speaking, when you're talking about a presentation or a pitch, you want to lead with the strongest thing, right? You want to hook your audience. So that's where the audience comes into play. So let's take health, for example. Let's say that I was going to make a presentation on health to high school students, okay, high school students. Which one of these 3, so think of the audience, in this case, high school students, okay, the audience analysis, which of these 5 areas do you think would resonate the most with a high school student? What should I start my presentation with? Stress.
I would say stress too.
Stress, okay? Yeah, so a high school student probably is stressed, right? And so you want to lead with that. That stress is a part of what it means to be healthy, okay? Or it could be sleep, I know my students, they tend to play Fortnite till the wee hours of the morning. Those of you familiar with Fortnite, yeah. So they're a lack of sleep deprivation is a very real thing. So I would start with that and say, hey, look, you may have the best diet in the world. You may be exercising an hour or two a day, but if you're getting 4 hours of sleep, you're not healthy. Okay, you see how that works? So you understand now that the context matters, the audience matters, and how you approach your business idea matters. Okay? All right. So once you have the brainstorm, once you have the framework in which who this audience is going to be, that's going to be listening to my pitch or my presentation, when you're going to do that is, the next step in this process is to outline. So one of the mistakes that I've seen entrepreneurs make, presenters for that matter, is they'll make their presentation on that brainstorming activity. Okay, what would be a problem that could result from you making a presentation off of your brainstorming session or your concept?
It could be too much.
Too much, very
Too
good.
much information.
Too much information, yes. What else? How about the flow? You could very easily jump around, right? It wouldn't be very structured because you could be going from this idea to that idea to this other branch or whatever. It's all over the place, right? Think of it as a roadmap. So let me ask you this. So let's say, for instance, your best friend tells you they're going on a road trip. Okay, it's your best friend. How excited are you to go on this road? You don't know where you're going. How excited are you to go on this road trip with your friend?
Super excited.
Super excited. Okay. How about half an hour later? Are you as excited? Still don't know where you're going.
I'm gonna say yes.
Okay, your best friend. So you're still excited, right? How about an hour later? Are you more excited, less excited, same excited?
I think of it as a surprise, honestly, because I'm optimistic. So I'm
Okay.
like, cool. So I don't know where we're going. I have to be back in 2 days. That's the limit.
Oh,
Do you know what I mean?
okay.
So,
As long as you have snacks, right? I
yeah.
mean, hot Cheetos.
So I think I'm getting anxious.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I
I think
really need to know now.
Yeah, right. So for most of us, at some point in time, we want to know where we're going. We don't have to know exactly the destination, but we want to know where we're going. And that's the same thing with a presentation. I want to know where you're taking me. If you don't tell me where we're going, I'm going to become less and less invested, less and less interested in what you have to say. So I want to know, hey, here are the places we're going to go. Again, you don't have to tell me ultimately where we're going to go, but you're definitely going to have to tell me about various pit stops we're going to take. And also, too, just human nature, I hate to say it, but we also want to know how much time I want to commit mentally to whatever it is you're presenting. All right? These are some of the things that are important. So that's why you take your brainstorming session here and you formulate an outline, because then you know what to lead with, you know the various pit stops you're going to take the audience on. So one of the ways in which you can do this is with an introduction, you can say something to the effect of, I am so-and-so, and I'm here representing this particular product or service, and there are 4 awesome attributes, 4 awesome features about my business that's going to make you excited or it's going to make you money, right? Now, and I can even, and we're going to talk about delivery here in a second, but I can even enumerate and say there are 4 amazing things about my product or service that's going to make you more money. In that particular instance, I know there's 4 things, so I see that, your nonverbal delivery, but you also said that. So I know now to invest in my time, my mental energy on those 4 things. As opposed if I don't tell you that, right, and I go right into it, I don't know, you're taking me on a road trip and I don't know where we're going. Okay? It may be exciting at first, but at some point in time, like, hey, you got to kind of tell me where we're going here, okay? So I'm going to do a road trip. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your delivery. So the A stands for audience analysis, B stands for brainstorm, O stands for outline, and the U, I couldn't think of a word, unique, I don't know, but it's actually your delivery. So imagine, if you will, the U is actually a capital. Anyways, you get it. So the U stands for your delivery. So there's a couple aspects of your delivery that I would like you to consider. Now, understand that I'm taking a 16-week course, public speaking, and basically cramming it into one slide. All right? So there's a lot of nuances to this that I can go into much more detail about, but this is the very high-level stuff when it comes to your delivery. So the first one is verbal delivery. So we know about volume and pitch and flow and things like that. One of the things I think that entrepreneurs or just novice public speakers struggle with the most is fillers. Do you know what fillers are? Likes, ers. things like that. The reason why that happens is because your brain gets so hyped, you get so nervous, your brain goes 1,000,000 miles an hour. And what it does is it sends messages to your mouth to catch up. And it sends these words, these repeated phrases, or they may not even be words, so your mouth can catch up to your brain, all right? So the way in which we help to minimize that is to try to train our brain for these half-second pauses so that we don't say words like, or so. I'm trying to demonstrate it to you right now. Do you see the difference? Yes. So it's just allowing our brain, our mouth, to catch up with our brain so we don't say these words that have very little meaning or repeated phrases that detract from our overall message. And it's just allowing our brain, our mouth, to catch up with our brain. And we do that with these half-second pauses. Now it's tough because, well, for my students in particular, that's how they talk to everyone, each other, right? They say something like, hey, did you know, like, that guy was, like, so cute, or, you know, like, what are you gonna do, like, tomorrow, like, what are we, you know what I mean? So it's different for them to, and for others as well, too, to communicate in a different style when you're up here, but there should be a different style, right? It shouldn't be the way in which you talk with your friends. So that's the verbal. Nonverbals, we're going to talk about our hand gestures, right? So I'm going to pick on the guys for a second here. So guys have a bad habit of sticking our hands in our pockets, right, when we talk, right? Why do you think females don't do that as much? You don't have pockets, right? Or if you do, they're so small apparently. I don't know for a fact. But the pockets are so small or so tight that you can't actually put your hand like inside of your pocket, right? So for guys, Nick is going to, I think, it's just a little joke, where you can, the reason that that's a problem is because we've been trained, we've become comfortable with sticking our hands in our pockets, right? What this does is minimize the use of hand gestures in a presentation. So if I were to make my presentation with my hands in my pockets or on back here, over time, see I'm trying not to do it, over time you'd be less and less interested. So again, I think generally speaking, females are better at expressing their ideas with their hand gestures. Do you think this is correct? Mm-hmm. Yes, I would agree. Partly it's because you don't have pockets. Right? But for the guys, and for ladies as well too, what I would like for you to think about is these things, your little phalanges, are spirit fingers, okay? So if you struggle with incorporating hand gestures into your presentation or into your pitch, you want to think of these as spirit fingers. So this is what I mean by this. So you want to describe things with your hands. So when something is big, you use your hands to describe the big building. Or if something is small, you use your hands to describe the small thing. If something is fast, use your hands, or slow, okay? So these things are your spirit fingers and you're describing things. So again, now you may not struggle with this, you may just naturally talk with your hands, but sometimes people don't, and it becomes less engaging if you don't remember to use your hands to articulate certain things. Now it can be distracting if you go too much with it, but you do want to use your hands to elaborate on certain points, make emphasis and things like that. All right, presentation aids. We're going to talk about that later on. Preparation tips. So how many of you get extremely nervous when you're speaking in public? Whoa, okay, so most of you. All right. All right. So there's two tricks that or three that I can suggest. One is you plan on doing something very fun and special afterwards. Okay? So I'll use myself as an example. I hate going to the dentist, still do, to this very day, right? The only way in which my mom would get me to go to the dentist was we had a trip planned to Dairy Queen afterwards. Now, it's kind of ironic that you would go get more sugar after your dentist appointment, but that was the only way in which I would be able to go to the dentist. The same thing, the same type of scenario can apply to you, where what it does is it tricks your brain into thinking that this one event will lead to this more profitable, more positive event later on. So it's almost like you're willing to go through this unpleasant experience in order to get something else. If you don't have the carrots at the end, you put more emphasis on this, oh my gosh, I have this thing that's really going to sting. I hate it, I don't like it, or whatever. But it will trick our brains into think, okay, yeah, it's going to sting, but I have this other thing in mind. Okay? The other thing that you can consider is a totem. Any of you have seen Inception, the movie Inception?
No.
Yeah? No? Okay. It's a pretty good movie, but it's a movie about whether or not you're in someone's dream or if you're in reality. Right? It's really interesting, so you should check it out. But one of the things that I found interesting about the movie is this thing called a totem. And so in order to decipher whether or not you were in someone's dream or if you were in reality, is you had this little thing that you kept with you, right? It could be a dice, it could be a spinning top, something that where in reality it would topple over, or you would know that there would be an equal number, a chance to get any number, things like that. The idea behind it is that if someone touched it, that it would break the totem, that you wouldn't be able to tell whether or not you were in reality or in a dream. So you were very protective of this thing because you knew that it would act a certain way in reality. And if it didn't act that way, then you were in someone's dream. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Interesting movie. The point I'm trying to make is this, is that you find something that's small that you can put into your pocket or your purse that gives you this same level of comfort. Now you can have something in your hand physically like a clicker here. This does wonders because there's something that I'm holding on to, something tangible that I know if the world comes crashing down while I'm making my presentation or how nervous I am, there's a source of comfort here that's not distracting that enables me to kind of center myself so I don't get too, so it could be a keychain, a picture of someone, something that takes your mind away from the stressful situation that you may be going through. Another little tidbit too is to take a few deep breaths. So what I want you to do is I want you to close your materials. This is something you can do 30 seconds before your presentation. All right? So what I want you to do is when I say breathe in, I want you to breathe in, hold it for a second or two, and then slowly release for a couple seconds. Okay? So again, you want to breathe in, I'm going to tell you, breathe in, hold it for a moment or two, and then slowly exhale. All right? So let's go ahead and do that. So breathe in, hold it, and then release. 2 more times. Breathe in, hold it, and release. 1 more time. Breathe in, hold it, and release. How'd that feel? Relaxing, right? And that was a matter of 20 seconds. So if you're super nervous, super hyped, you can do that. Now, it's not going to take you from one state of being into a completely different state of being, but it will allow you to calm those nerves for just a moment to where then you can refocus. It's all about recentering yourself so that way you're not placing so much emphasis on your presentation that you freak yourself out. The totem, the carrot at the end, the deep breathing, something like that. It just centers you to a point where you're not thinking so much about the presentation and what others might think of you or whatever. All right, that's also a big part of this, how to manage nerves. Attire, I have seen entrepreneurs where they'll dress a little down or either too formal. So something like what I have right now is something that conveys professionalism, but it's not over the top. All right, so do consider that. I think sometimes entrepreneurs, because they're working for themselves, they feel like they can kind of dress like Mark Zuckerberg or whatever, in the hoodie and the blue jeans and the flip-flops. Not really, right? You are communicating something non-verbally based on what you wear, but you don't want to go with a suit and tie either, I don't think. You want to dress somewhere in between with business casual, whatever. But your clothes do matter. And then positioning, one of the things that I think is a huge investment we've talked about is the clicker. So I would suggest if you have an opportunity to present your material visually in form of a PowerPoint, that you use a clicker so that way you can move around. If you don't, someone or yourself is going to have to move back and forth to change the slides. And so that's something that could be distracting if every slide you're having to move over or you're having to do the wink to the person, whoever who's doing the pitch deck. All right. So these are some of the things that's involving tech transfer. So that's a big part of STC, the rainforest. We get entrepreneurs that are in the STEM fields and they have some sort of some system, if you will, that is very complex, scientific, technologically is advanced, and so forth. So these are some of the things to consider when you're thinking about how to articulate your tech to the general populace or to others that aren't related in that field. Okay, so the first one is less science, more application. So I have, is this applied to any one of you here in the room? Okay, nice. Somewhat, okay, so I'll touch on it briefly. So when someone is in the STEM field, STEM-related field, sometimes they can be hyper-focused on the science behind it, either the coding or the equations or whatever. Yeah, right. And the reason for that is because of validity, right? You want to show that your product works, that it's technologically advanced, and that the numbers support whatever technology you're doing, right? For the general public, that's not really how we see marketability, if you will, okay? So it's more about the application as opposed to the science. So I could tell you how wonderful my app is and how much coding goes into it, and all the wonderful things it does behind the scenes. But really what I should be focusing on is it does this. It makes someone's life easier, more enjoyable, or so forth, right? I don't need to see the formulas to prove to, you don't have to prove to me that it's mathematically sound, right? If you're employed by Sandia, I'm probably going to believe what you have to say. You didn't fake your way into Sandia. So when you say that this does work mathematically, sure, great, don't show me the equations, all right? I don't need to. Less abstract, more concrete. So the more hypotheticals, the harder it is to understand what's going on. If you can say that it can be applied here, that would be more preferable than the possibilities that it has, right? Now you can touch on the futures of this particular product or service or this tech, but an emphasis should be placed on this is what it does currently. So I can understand, wrap my arms around your tech before we move on to the other possibilities, all right? Less jargon, more everyday language. This includes acronyms as well too, right? We're not all familiar with your acronyms. We're not familiar with the jargon that's in your field. So now I'm not asking you to dumb down your idea, okay? I'm really not. And sometimes people in the STEM-related fields feel that way. It's like, this is such a wonderful product. This is such a wonderful service. This technology is so great, right? And the reason why it's great is because of this, this, and this. If I tried to tell you all of the nuances, like the protons and electrons and all this other stuff for some sort of electricity-based product, right? If you get into the neurons, protons, I don't even know what I'm talking about at this point. A simpler way in which to say this is just to say electricity, right? Because the general populace, the general public is going to know what you're referring to, right? And it's tough because sometimes like that's such a general, ambiguous term that I want to tell you what it actually does. And you have to kind of check yourself and say, okay, I'm going to lose my audience. They're going to become less interested if I tell them, if I break it down. It may be hard to say electricity, but trust me, the general public is going to understand and buy into what you have to sell, in this case, technology, more so than if you talk about these other things. All right, less hypotheticals, more possibilities. Yes, and then here's the last point. When you're talking about STEM-related products, STEM-related tech, there's a lot of emphasis placed on the functionality, what it does in terms of the application, but there's not a lot of emphasis placed on profitability, how you're going to make that person money, how that investor is going to make money. That doesn't mean you have to be an expert in target market, demographics, and marketing, and anything like that. But you should know some basics on their revenue model in terms of what it's going to cost to make, right? And the possible revenue streams that you're going to, the investor is going to benefit from, okay? If you don't have some idea about that, the business community is going to ask you a series of questions like, how are you going to make me money, right? What's my return on investment? What's my ROI? It may be a wonderful idea, but I need to know you're going to make me money, right? I'm going to give you money. What am I expecting? More money back, right? That could be into the future, but I need to have some idea. I want you to have some idea of what it's going to, what kind of money you're going to make further down the road, okay? All right, so here are some basic building blocks on pitching your idea, okay? So the first thing, one of the more common ways in which you pitch your idea is you state the problem that you're solving, right? So you identify some sort of problem in the world and the solution to that problem. I had a student entrepreneur talking about how millennials and Gen Z, they live very fast urban lifestyles. And one of the things that I guess has kind of fallen by the wayside is gardening. And part of that's because of the fact, that millennials and Gen Zs don't have backyards to garden, right? And so what she said is that she went to her, I think it was her grandparents' house, right? Of course, to garden. She loved it, fell in love with it, right? But the problem is that she lives in a condo townhome that doesn't have a backyard. So that's a problem, right? She wants to garden, but she doesn't have the physical space in which to garden. So what she created was a little gardening box, hydroponic gardening box. So it doesn't require soil, and so it's this hydroponic system to where you don't need soil, and it's just water-based, and yeah, and it's a wonderful idea. As a matter of fact, she capitalized and said that every month it's like a box, like millennials, like there's this thing like subscription boxes. Yeah. So that's what you get. So every month you get a new box of seeds, and so you'd be able to change it from like herbs to like the Christmas package or the spring flowers or whatever. It's a brilliant idea, and the idea behind this is that it was solving a problem that a millennial Gen Z wants to garden but doesn't have the physical space to garden. Problem, solution is her box, is her seed box. That makes sense? So now I'm captivated by this. Now, the problem has to make sense, right? It can't just be some esoteric problem that's not really a problem, right? But in this case, she was able to articulate that it was a problem, okay? And one of the ways in which you can frame this or have your audience relate to your idea is you can say this phrase, so you can say something like, how it's really boring when you're in a commute? What if I told you about a game you can play with your friends while you drive? Something like that. You don't have to, it's not while you're playing, while you're driving or whatever, but there you have some sort of app to where if you get to the place sooner than your friends, you get more points. You could say something like this. How, this is how DDR started. How you hate to miss your shows, right? Well, what if I told you about a program where you could stop and rewind your shows, right? You're like, whoa. And that's how that started, was because it was a how. So you're trying to relate, to connect to your audience and say, okay, this semi common occurrence, it's a problem, it's not great, it's not ideal, I have the solution for that. So that's one way in which you can frame this. You also want to tell the audience who you are and what makes you special. So I did a little bit of that. I told you my name, but I also told you some of my background, academic background, to where you would hopefully believe me a little bit more so than if I hadn't told you those things. And that also gives you the idea behind this right here is why should I believe you? If I give you a reason as to why you should believe me, whether I work for Sandia or I have my business degree or I've been a pitch coach for so many years, I've taught public speaking classes, blah, 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 or whatever, something that you actually verbalize to the audience so that they have an increased sense of buy-in to you as the speaker. Because if you don't have that, I don't know who you are, where you came from, or why I should believe you, right? You need to say that, right? And here's a couple other ones. All right. So now we're going to talk about the actual presentation itself. So those are the things you consider before you actually pitch. Now we're going to talk about the actual pitch itself, okay? All right. So when it comes to a pitch, there's different contexts. So I've seen it as small as 90 seconds, where you don't have any visual aids. We have 90 seconds to articulate your idea to a crowd. And I've seen it all the way up to 5 minutes, where you can have what's called a pitch deck, where you have different slides that typically you're given the pitch deck from so for instance, the STC and Innovation Academy, they'll actually give you a pitch deck and say, we want to hear these 5 elements within your pitch, so you don't have to come up with these. They tell you what they want to hear from your business idea. And I've seen it all the way up to like 20 to 25 minutes. But I will tell you this, that generally speaking, that pitch, the point of the pitch is to get your idea out there, but more so than that, it's to pique the interest of those who are there. Ideally, that the idea, your business idea, if you're able to articulate it, communicate your business idea in an effective manner, those that are in the audience would approach you afterwards and say, hey, let's grab lunch. Hey, I'm interested in your idea, tell me more, those types of things, okay? So if you think about it in that context, it makes it, one, a little bit more predictable in that you know ahead of time what's going on, but also too, you understand that you don't have to tell them everything, right? That if you got 90 seconds, that's not any time at all, right? Really what you're trying to do is pique their interest enough to where they ask you, hey, that's an interesting idea, tell me more, right? Far too many times I've had entrepreneurs who want to get everything out, they're so excited about their product, they tell you every little detail, and it's overwhelmed. It's kind of like drinking water out of a fire hydrant. It's like, whoa, 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 like this is way too much, right? This is not the time nor the place. If I like your idea, then I'll dedicate more time to you and say, hey, let's grab lunch so you can tell me more about it, all right? So these are the 5 key elements from my perspective when it comes to a pitch. So we're going to talk about each here in just a second. All right. So there are multiple ways in which you can format your pitch. Again, if it's 90 seconds, you probably don't have enough time to create a PowerPoint such as this. You're probably going to have to be able to articulate it just verbally and get it out there and hope that they ask you for a more detailed explanation later on. But these are the 3 top formats that I would consider the most appropriate for most pitch competitions or most environments. The first one is PowerPoint. We're all familiar with PowerPoint, right? Okay, so that's all well known with that. How many of you are familiar with Prezi? Okay, so Prezi is more dynamic. So Prezi is like a giant canvas. So it'll zoom in and zoom out, right? You can have embedded videos, so it's much more dynamic than, let's say, PowerPoint was more linear in approach, right? So you engineers and those in the STEM-related fields really like the PowerPoint because of the fact that it's linear and they've become accustomed to it or whatever. But if your idea is a little bit more creative, a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more outside the box, let's say, I would like for you to consider Prezi because it's a lot more dynamic. It's visually stimulating to where the presentation in and of itself is actually pretty entertaining, whereas PowerPoint itself isn't that great, right? The third one is Keynote. Are you familiar with Keynote? Yeah, so this is Apple's version, okay? So Keynote's actually pretty powerful. Keynote's used a lot for vloggers. So if you know like the intro, a lot of familiar with vlog? Yeah, vloggers, okay? So vloggers use Keynote for their intro. So there's animation, there's color, the clarity is really good. So if you wanted to go that route and you're an Apple person, you can go with Keynote, okay? All right. So here are some suggestions, some of the recommendations that I have that you may not want to take yourself. It's up to you. It's just suggestions, just recommendations. For the first one that I would suggest is using a template. So if you're going to use PowerPoint or anyone with Prezi, my suggestion is use a template. And the reason why you want to use a template is for these reasons right here. One, it makes you look like a graphic designer, which you're probably not. Okay, so this is an example of a template, okay, where we're all familiar with you choose one that's colorful or something that relates to, in some way, your product or your service, and then you just basically what's called plug and chug. You just go through the bullet points and so forth. It's an easy framework to work within, so you have different choices. Again, you're not the one who's designing the background or the template, it's already pre-created for you. I've seen it where entrepreneurs will try to get creative and create their own templates, and it goes wrong more than it goes right. And so something to consider. Some of the other things to consider is not to be too distracting. So if it's a picture of, I don't know, Tokyo or something, and it has nothing to do with your product, that's distracting, right? No matter how visually stimulating it is, that would be distracting. It could be too abstract. So you have something like this, where you have the future celestial design, that's pretty abstract, right? You want to have something that's a little bit more concrete, again, that there's a connection between the two. And then there's not too much of a wow factor. So something like this, it's a picture of an avocado and I think it's a jalapeno pepper right here. It could be, your product or service could be a restaurant, right? But if I see those two vegetables here, what might I be thinking throughout your presentation?
Guacamole.
Guacamole or a Mexican food restaurant, right? A Mexican food restaurant. So if you have barbecue and you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, there's pictures of 2 items here, right? That I may use in some dish or whatever, but if I see this over and over and over again, I might be thinking, okay, it's just a disconnect here between your barbecue place and the fact that I see an avocado and a jalapeno pepper, guacamole, whatever. Okay. All right. So so I'm referring back to the pitch deck. So here are the 5 basics when you're considering, bless you, when you're considering a pitch deck. So a pitch deck is something you create that you carry with you to the various pitch competitions or various opportunities in which to present your idea, okay? Now, again, it should be modified based on the audience, right? So don't create a pitch deck and then just use it everywhere. One, because word gets around that you're using the same pitch deck everywhere, right? But two, it falls flat for some audiences. But nevertheless, here are some of the 5 things that you could consider. First is the team. So you want to have a slide that talks about the different team members and their skills or expertise that makes your team so wonderful. So think of the Avengers, right? You have Thor with the hammer, Hulk, and so forth. They all have some special skill and ability that makes the team, right? Same thing with you. You want to make sure that the audience knows, hey, it's not just me. This other person here is with me, and they specialize in this, so they're really good at that, something like that. Problem need statement. So you can say this verbally, or you can have a slide, but that definitely is needed when you're pitching your business idea. You definitely need to state the problem and the need. Because if you don't, then I might question whether or not it's actually viable, because there's no problem. The market, okay, who is it that you're going to be selling to, who's going to be buying it? Your basic revenue model, cost, revenue, those types of things. And then past, present, and future. So I would like for you to tell me where you've come from, the growth that you've had, where you're at right now, and what your future plans are. I want to see that you're ambitious. I want you to see that you've planned for that you've thought ahead, that I've seen some growth as well too, that you're not in the same spot business-wise you were 6 months ago. So this past, present, future is also a big deal. Now these are just 5 of them. As you can tell here, there could be up to 12 slides in the pitch deck. Now that's a little much in the sense of like 5 to 6 minutes, which is the typical pitch competition time frame. 12 slides is too much information. But you can do 12 different slides. So you have introduction, team, problem, advantages, solution, so on and so forth, all the way around. So each slide is dedicated to one of these 12 aspects. I took 5 because that's typically a little bit more common than having a 12-slide pitch deck, okay? But it is important. So similar to your elevator pitch or elevator speech, a good entrepreneur will have a pitch deck ready to go, because you kind of use it as your business card in some respects. You could say, hey, I can shoot you a copy of my pitch deck. Yeah, great, that kind of thing. So, that. All right. So I'm going to actually show you here. Can you help me? So PowerPoint's actually become a little bit more powerful, a little bit more dynamic than you might think. And I'm going to show you one way in which to do that. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to go to my go to the Firefox.
Oh, okay.
I can drive from here.
Let me just share the screen again.
Okay.
This one?
Yeah. Great. All right. So what I've done here is I've gone into my account at UNM, my webmail account, okay? And what I've done is I've gone into Office 365. The reason why I've gone to 365 is because there's a section here called Design that's really powerful, okay? So this is not the standard desktop version of PowerPoint. This is 365, Office 365, and you go up here to the cloud-based, yeah? So, okay, so you know what I'm talking about? All right. So I'll just walk you through it. So I go over here and PowerPoint. So I go to my apps, PowerPoint. And I would suggest, similar to your desktop version of PowerPoint, is to choose a template. So let's say, for instance, you wanted to choose this one right here. Okay. All right. So here's an example of a template. And let's say I wanted to insert a new slide. So we'll do this one right here. Okay. And let's say I wanted to do, let's see here, driving directions to Valencia campus. All right.
Send that to us afterwards.
Yeah, right. And then first is take I-25, and then exit, so on and so forth, right? Now, let's say I wanted to go over here and I wanted to take, find a picture of Los Lunas, right? Let's go with this one, the public library. So I save this image, save it to my desktop or wherever. And then let me go back to my presentation here. Oops. It keeps appearing. It's okay. All right, there we go, okay. And I'm going to insert my picture that I just created. All right. Now, here's where the magic happens. You see where it says design and design ideas right here? You click on this. Give it a second. And it'll give you design ideas to make your slide even that much more engaging. And the more pictures you apply, so let's say we wanted this one and we also wanted to say this one. So say image desktop. We go back into here. Let me go ahead and insert another picture. This one right here. All right. Then I go to design, and then the more pictures you add, the more, so you could do something like this. All right. The reason why I bring this up is because it does a really good job of taking images and formatting them in a way that's appealing and visually engaging. And so, and it looks like you're some sort of, again, graphic designer or something. So anyways, and you can add more pictures and it'll give you different layouts and so forth. It's a pretty powerful tool. Now, the reason why I showed you here on the cloud-based Office 365 is because sometimes your versions of PowerPoint, your desktop versions, won't have that. Sometimes they will, but this is the, oops, you can't see that. I'll go back to this right here. Your desktop version won't have this design feature. And so you're gonna have to format it yourself. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but I'm not the best at formatting. Can you go back to the other one? So those are some ideas on how to create a pitch deck.
So if you were going to send a pitch deck, you would send the entire PowerPoint presentation? Would you send, how much would you send?
Would you send, I'm sorry, what do you mean by
You
send?
gave the example a few minutes ago that, you know.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to send
Yeah,
someone
yeah,
a
yeah.
pitch deck.
Yeah.
What would you actually send?
So I would send them these 5 things right here.
So
So
there are 5 different slides. that
5 different slides.
represent that. You
Yeah.
wouldn't try to get all that information onto one slide.
No. You'd want to have, maybe you have 2 different pitch decks. One, you have this one here for something that you can give to a potential investor, right, that you meet at some networking event, let's say. And then you have a more detailed version for pitch competition.
So is this something that pretty much has taken the place of like a white paper or a straw man?
Yeah, in some respects, yes. Yes, because these are key elements that the business community is going to want to know. And so you can be persuasive and compelling and tell them your business idea, but they want to see the details behind that. They want to make sure that you can back it up. And that's how you do that with the pitch deck. So yeah, very similar to a white paper. And those in STEM-related fields know what a white paper is. But if you tell the business community as a whole about white papers, they may not know what that means. So, but they will know what a pitch deck means. Okay.
And how much of the budget would you put in that? Like you have the revenue model,
yeah.
How much?
It's up to you. It's up to you. It can be pretty complex in terms of your startup costs. So for tech-related ideas, the startup costs are big, right? And so in that particular instance, you would say, yes, I need $100,000 to get this off the ground, but by year 2, we'll have this type of profitability. We'll have a prototype, or better yet, we'll have the capability to manufacture our prototypes, or version 1 or whatever. And then at that point in time, we'll be able to sell them at whatever, something like that. Yeah. Yeah, these are really good questions. You really, again, with this and with your pitches, you want to try to be in that second meeting. It's not, you're not trying to give them the whole background about your business idea with your pitch deck. You're giving them just enough so that they said, okay, let's talk more about this. Because then what they'll do is they'll be able to ask questions and say, oh, I see here that you're budgeting this much. Well, we think you're gonna need more or less or whatever. Okay? Yes.
Remember they said repeat the audience.
Oh yeah, the question. Oh yes, that's right. Thank you. So the question was, what should you have in your pitch deck, right? Does that encompass what you were trying to say?
What would you, I was basically trying to make the connection between a white paper and a pitch deck.
Oh yeah, the connection between a white paper and a pitch deck. So there are some similarities. I guess the big difference is that I would imagine that a fair amount of individuals in the business community, investors, venture capitalists, may not know what a white paper entails. So much that a pitch deck is, you're speaking their language a little bit more fluently. Okay, good question. All right. So it's not moving. So the last piece that I had, as far as bringing your idea to life, is animation. Let's see here. There it goes. Okay. So here's another unique aspect to PowerPoint is the animations. All right. So you can see right there you have the curtain. Do you all know how to add animation to it? Yeah. A little bit. Okay. All right. So animation is good. It's similar to like humor in that it's good every once in a while, but too much humor and it becomes a distraction. All right. So when it comes to animation, use it sparingly. So not every slide should have animation associated with it, but it is some sort of visual stimulation that you're breaking up the PowerPoint, somewhat of the monotony associated with PowerPoint. So use it sparingly, but one of the ways in which you can do this is projections. That's a great way. So graphs, any sort of illustration showing that there's an upward trajectory of your product or service, a revenue model, things like that. The second one is, does this add value? So the animation and or the illustrations, does it add value to what I'm saying? Sometimes I see individuals, entrepreneurs will add graphics just for the sake of adding graphics because they've been taught that less is more in terms of less verbiage, more pictures. But sometimes the pictures can be distracting. I'm like, well, where did you come up with that? Or how does that fit into your overall product or your overall service? So ask yourself, does it add value? So my rule is every fourth slide. So nothing more than that. So I would venture that maybe do every third slide, maybe, but not every other slide, definitely not every slide. About every fourth slide, you can add animations to it. And then you can also consider these slide transitions. So that's what I had here. So that's another animation. It's like, oh, it's kind of fun, right? And that adds another element of creativity to it. And that's it. So we're right on time. So I had an hour. So that's it. Any questions about pitching that you want to know? Yes.
How in depth do you usually get into the market and the financials when you're doing the?
Oh, that's a great question. So when it comes to the market, you definitely want to know your primary target market. So you can say my primary target market is 18 to 35-year-olds, whatever. Or primary target is physicians in the Southwest region or whatever. You can have auxiliary or secondary markets as well too. It shows that you've thought outside of the box, but you definitely want to know that we feel like this segment of the market is going to be the one who's likely to buy our product. You don't want to say though, well, this is such a revolutionary product that everyone's going to want to buy it, right? You want to have some sort of niche market, right? That's much more feasible from a business perspective than you saying I have this wonderful idea. Now, if it ends up reaching the masses, wonderful, but you definitely want to know and then back it up and say, well, we've done a focus group. We know based on our research that there's a competitor who's selling it to these types of folks. Ours is better in some way, some aspect, but this is what these are the people that our competitors are selling to.
Gavin,
Yes.
Hi, it's Susan Cornelia, speaking out of the atmosphere. One of the things I might add on to some of the important things that you've been talking about with regard to market is on April 17th, being broadcast from UNM main campus, we're going to have a program called Market Analysis. And it's all about what you just are talking about. We're going to have a workshop there.
Oh, great. Yeah, we're passing along the flyer as we speak.
And main campus. But the other thing in figuring out market is what is the behavior of the people who are going to use your product? How do they behave? How do they use what it is that you're going to use? And then look for those people, talk to them, and figure out, in fact, that there's a market there. And we're going to talk about that on the 17th.
Great. Yeah, go into a deep dive on that. How would you handle the financials?
The financials?
Yeah, how much information would you be expecting from an entrepreneur with regards to the financials?
That's a good question, probably one of the most important. When you are looking at market, people will have a tendency to say this market is $6.5 billion. But by definition, when you're doing a startup, your product is disruptive. So you don't know whether or not they're actually going to use it. So all you can say to yourself at the point you're initially developing your pitch is this is the size of the market. We intend on penetrating it in this way, and by talking to clients, we're going to find out what they're willing to pay. However, as an investor, I want to know that there's margin on it. And so what I find with most companies when they start up, they don't charge enough, and there's no room for the investor to make any money. And let's face it, that's what we're in it for. We're also in it to create a future for others. That's why we do what we do. But what we want them to do is go talk with others and ask the following questions. These are the features we're going to have. What features do you want? What are you willing to pay for it? What are you currently using, and what are you paying for that? That's how you figure out what the price is going to be. And then you start asking people, in your estimation, how many people are could use something like this, and you start to build a number that is more realistic about the number of people and the size of the market initially. Because initially where everybody is pre-A, which means pre-massive investment. We're investing in the entrepreneur, and we want to know that they're constantly seeking information from their customers as to what features they want and what are they willing to pay for it. We're looking for something called minimal, viable, valuable, validated product. That means viable means they can do it. Valuable means people have told you what they're willing to pay for it, and you come up with a pricing scheme for services and product. And validated means they've said, yeah, that sounds reasonable, I'll pay that. So that's how you come up with your price. It's not, you have to do a deep dive on your research and find out if anybody's doing something similar. Is it more expensive? Is it more complicated? How are you different? Yeah, you have to do that. But it's by talking to your customers, potential customers, people that are in the same field as you, people who are already doing it, people who are going to use it, that you're going to find out what people are willing to pay.
Another thing too to consider is whether or not it's scalable. Do you want to talk about the scalability of your product as well too?
Well, scalable is really interesting. When we're working in the very beginning, like most everybody is doing right now, we're looking for, like I said, minimal, viable, valuable, validated product. At that particular point, we'd like you, when you're talking about your business model, to say how you're going to scale. For instance, initially I'm going to be selling data analysis, but eventually I'm going to have a product that's an application that they can use, and it sits out in the cloud, and I'm going to do, we're going to be able to serve them and work with them. Those kinds of things are what we mean by scalability, but at least initially for pre-A, we're not necessarily thinking you've got to have your final plan on how to be scalable. We're looking for you to have an idea of that, because mostly when we're investing in you pre-A, we're investing in you.
And that's really what this presentation was about, is that they're investing in you, right? And so in this case, being able to articulate, being able to communicate your idea in an effective, compelling, insightful manner is this first step in this process. Because I want to buy you, right? I want to buy your passion, your expertise, your unique skill set. And then once I'm on board with you, right, then let's discuss more about your idea. Time and time again, I've seen great business ideas fall flat because the speaker, the presenter, doesn't do a good job of articulating their business idea to get them to buy into them first before they buy into the business.
Absolutely, 100% the best piece of advice.
All right, and that's it. It's 11 o'clock. So, that's it for. Yes, we have more workshops here. Thank you to everyone that's zoomed out.
Don't forget to fill out
Oh,
the
yeah.
quiz.
Yeah, there will be a quiz that'll be sent out to all the participants. If you want your certificate, your entrepreneurship certificate, right? Then you need to take the quiz. Is there like a passing score?
They need to take the quiz,
Okay.
and then the video will also be available
There you
online
There you
shortly, not
Okay.
right away.
Okay, open book, open video test. All right, thank you everyone, thank you.